You're listening to a Blank City Pictures podcast.
Good afternoon, everybody. How's everyone doing? That was weak, but all right. Yeah. All right. Thank you all for being here. This is officially the Cryptid Bros panel, so if that's not where you meant to be, tough. You're stuck here now. Please don't stand up. It ruins the vibe.
The door's locked from the outside.
They don't actually for legal reasons, but yeah, you're safe.
All belong to the
Yes. So, we'll do some quick introductions here real quick. My name is Jason McCord, and I am a horror author, producer, publisher. If it involves horror, I do it. That's kind of my shtick. That's what I do. Next to me is...
My name is Brett Etzel. I'm a filmmaker. I'm a writer-director for Blank City Pictures here in Phoenix, Arizona.
My name is Emma Rucker. I'm an extreme horror writer. I'm also the secretary for the local HWA chapter, and I help that one at the end do a lot of his stuff as well.
that one.
Yeah, the.
Hi, everyone. My name is Katie Cage, and I am a very part-time horror writer, and I'm a four-time undefeated Dead Right Horror Trivia Fan Fusion player, and which we haven't seen in a few years, but yeah, I'm also a hanger-on of cool people.
So
Not
yeah,
me.
we're going to get started here on our discussion of cryptids, their origins and histories, where they fit in fiction. And before we get started, there's a question that I want to ask. What is cryptid?
It's a currency that... No, I'm kidding. It probably is a cryptocurrency now, but... So for those that maybe are just curious here to be about it, very briefly, cryptids are just creatures or animals or some kind of fauna that exists that cannot yet be proven or documented. That's basically all it is. Obviously, for the sake of our panel, to make it more fun.
So where do you draw the line between cryptid and monster?
Cryptids, well, that's actually a really good point. That's one of the reasons why we're doing this panel on cryptids and not specifically on monsters. So a monster would be, for example, Frankenstein is a monster. That's, well, you know what I mean. Frankenstein's
fiction.
monster, don't come at me. Yes, I know that's not his name. So that would be a monster and something that we know does not exist and cannot exist in the phylons. Whereas certain things could, in theory, be a real thing. We can't prove it yet, but it theoretically could be.
Like lycanthrope.
Yes, that'd be a good example. So lycanthropes, like a werewolf, in theory could exist. Do we have proof of that? No. Are people trying to find proof? Probably. I'm sure there are people out there that do it. Probably some people in this room are probably trying to prove it. That's okay. God bless them. So again, cryptids are just things that aren't provable yet. There's actually a lot of animals in our current understanding that were cryptids up until disturbingly recently. Gorillas were cryptids until the early 1900s. We had no proof they existed. People just believed they did, so they went down to Africa and they found them.
Question.
Yes.
Could the thylacine or Tasmanian tiger in its current state be considered a cryptid?
Probably. So the question about being like, we have the Tasmanian tiger is an animal that did exist, kind of saber-toothed tiger type of animal, believed to currently exist, maybe possibly, but we have no proof of it. Again, example of cryptids. And of course, we have the more supernatural types of cryptids out there that we're more aware of, things like Sasquatch, the Mothman, stuff like that. A little bit more, let's say, out there. I'm not trying to yuck anyone's yum, so if you just firmly believe the Jersey Devil is a real thing, he took my mother's gas, whatever, like, I'm not here to necessarily debate all that. We're mostly here to just talk about them, their place, and why we like them, why we talk about them, that kind of thing. So we're not trying to prove or disprove because I am not qualified to do that.
Yeah.
So
I'd like to know, for a show of hands, there's a lot of you here. How many of you are real cryptid creeps? Like, who's super into...
How do you define cryptid creep?
you feel that in your heart.
It's a spectrum.
That's up for you to decide. You don't let anybody else apply that to your own personality.
So, and like I said, because this is one of those things where even if you are I'm going to use the word believer, because it does take a leap of faith to believe in cryptids. The giant squid, again, a perfect example, proposed back, Jules Verne, 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, everyone's like, there's no possible way, and then what, not even 10 years ago, we got one. So everyone just believed that it was a real thing until they just did it, until they were able to just prove that, yeah, there's one, here it is, look at it. It was a cryptid until 10 years ago. Now it is a certifiable biological fact. So, it's a thing. So, and to start this off, so we're talking about like what cryptids are and all of that kind of stuff. And for me, the reason why I pitched this panel, what I want to talk about and everything is I'm really a big believer and a big fan of like the origins of horror. And for me personally, I am of the belief that the second story ever told from humanity when we developed the spoken word was a horror story. Horror is what kept us around the campfire. Horror is what kept us from wandering away. It kept us safe. So cryptids naturally are a very early example of that. You can't go into those rustling bushes because there's a bugaboo in there and it's going to get you. That's not a hard leap to make. It really isn't. And then it evolved, and as our words have gotten more elaborate, our ability to communicate has got more elaborate, so have our monsters and so have our unknowns. So now we have a list pulled up here of official cryptids out there in the world, and the list is expansive and very detailed. Yeah. So it's a natural evolution of our own anxieties and our own curiosities. Do you have a question?
Who's on this board of certification for what's an official cryptid?
So it's
People who have a Wikipedia account.
I think Elon Musk is part of that.
so the
It's a subgenre.
there is a
Scientology.
list of people that study and explore cryptids. They are called cryptozoologists. The certifiability of that profession is debated. I'm not going to get into that here. Again, that's not why we're here.
It's the science of vibes, right?
The science of vibes, yeah. If enough people vibe with an idea, it just gets adopted like anything else. Things are real because we say they are.
The Bigfoot Hunter show that aired was the first time I ever heard the expression "squatch," and I will never get tired of that word.
I remember that show.
It's a mini
Oh my
squad.
gosh.
Yeah, it was a show called Finding Bigfoot, ran for 8 seasons. Never found it.
They got close a couple
Spoiler.
times.
They got close. Yeah, they got super close. So again, this is all very nebulous, and again, we're obviously going to use a very wide and blanket term of what we refer to as cryptids for the sake of this conversation, because this is here to entertain. So we're going to be talking about it more from a anthropological standpoint and less as a science perspective, because again, I'm not a scientist, I'm not qualified to speak on that part of it. So with all that being said, obviously most people have kind of like a pet cryptid, so to speak, something they really latch onto and really like and everything. For myself personally, my first exposure to what a cryptid was, besides Bigfoot, because that kind of happens if you're of a certain age. But my first real one that really intrigued me actually was the Mothman. Yeah.
Fan favorites.
I love the idea of the Mothman. I absolutely love this. So, for those who don't know, and again, I'm very broad stroking this, so if you're a big fan of Mothman, don't at me, okay? I get it. All right, but for the sake of brevity. So in the 1970s, there was a bridge that collapsed back east. I want to say it was in Pennsylvania, I think. Point Pleasant, thank you, yes. I did research for this, can you tell? So there was a bridge that collapsed, and leading up to that, multiple people were reporting the presence of what became known as Mothman, some figure they could not really credibly describe. It was described as basically man-shaped, but with moth wings. You get the picture here. And it was believed that the Mothman either heralded this collapse or this disaster or caused it. These days, it's more about heralding it. Back then, people really did believe the Mothman caused this calamity. And spottings of him have continued on since, although not as much as they did at that time. I like this cryptid a lot, because he's tied to a very specific, very particular event in history. It's not like Bigfoot, where it's just this whole culture around finding the missing link and all of that stuff. This is about one specific event with one group of people in one particular area. And that absolutely fascinates me. These days, again, with the benefit of perspective, this was almost 50 years ago now that this event happened. You know, we get into the idea of like mass hysteria, that someone saw something and they related it, someone read about it, heard about that, and they piled on and they built up their own beliefs and ideas about it. Our memories are awful things. If you guys weren't aware of that, human memory is not good. When you remember things, you actually aren't remembering the thing you're remembering your last memory of that thing. So you're literally playing a game of telephone with your own thoughts. So it's very quickly snowballs into this. I saw something, and then, 5 days later, oh no, I actually saw the thing had glowing eyes. It was a whole bit. I watched it happen. So this one event just caused this massive cryptid, and I just love it.
When you say that he heralded the collapse of the bridge,
Yeah.
you're saying that like that's him manifesting? You're like he's willing it into being by.
No, more like a banshee that comes and like warns you about death. Like
Silver Surfer.
Yeah. He's not causing the calamity. He's just telling you it's gonna happen, and brace yourself.
Oh, so this man with giant moth wings is going. Hey, that bridge is going to collapse, and nobody
That one
believes him.
specific bridge.
Yeah, kind of.
Just flew away.
That's the general idea. Yeah.
I was introduced to that, to the Mothman from the Mothman Prophecies film. I'd never heard of Mothman. I don't know if,
I was just thinking about that.
yeah.
I saw that in college.
yeah, Richard Gere scared the hell out of me.
Yeah, that was a thing for the movie, but yeah.
My experience with Mothman is from Fallout, so
It's also a really good magic card now too. So just if you like to play magic.
I think
Yeah.
it's in the Shin Megami Tensei series as well.
Yeah.
Maybe you'll get to it eventually, but it's like, my question is like, how, I'm trying to figure out how to phrase it. Like, when these beings, Mothman, Wendigo, and all of them find their way into pop culture, like, how does this affect the legitimacy of actually trying to find these alleged beings if they do exist?
Well, see, and that's where the benefits. So the question being like, how do we legitimize, or how does this affect legitimate science? You guys got to remember, the only thing between screwing around and science is writing things down. So yeah, exactly. So if you have the only difference between a real creature or a fake creature is just identification. It's just writing it down. So would there be a good idea to invest funds to go find Mothman? I don't think so, but I'm sure there's some people in the world who think that's a really good idea. Are we putting any really serious efforts into it? Probably not, but God help us if we ever did find the missing link and it actually was Mothman and his name was Steve and he lived in Chicago. We would feel really silly about it after the fact. It's a hard line. It's a difficult line to cross of like where do we do it? Because we can't necessarily always discredit every idea out there, because a lot of what we have now was considered insane even 30 years ago.
Yeah, 'cause I'm speaking as someone who's been privileged enough to visit Loch Ness twice.
Oh, okay.
And I've been out on the boat tours, I've seen the lake. It is very spooky, it is very atmospheric, but
Well, that's just Scotland.
as for something that's actually in there, I don't think so personally, but it's just the fact that the government and the tourist industries keep it going. Like, I always wonder, like,
yeah.
how would this affect, like, legitimate science?
Well-
Especially, like, because there's like this guy, I don't know if he's still there, but he used to be an accredited scientist. Now he spends his time making clay models camped out by the lake.
So I have a good thing for that one. So extraterrestrials might be an example of a cryptid, for instance. That's probably one of the more polarizing cryptids we have in current modern day. People that firmly believe that aliens are a real, actual thing. Whatever that happens to mean, they exist out there in some way. 50, 60 years ago, they were a joke. They were just like, oh, yeah, of course you saw a flying saucer, drink more, you'll stop seeing them. But now we have SETI. We have literally multiple government-funded agencies, real legitimate scientists that spend their time looking for little green men. It's a real actual thing. It wasn't 50, 60 years ago. It takes enough interest and enough possibility in expanding our concepts of what we consider to be probable to make it worthwhile.
I guess it's like the policy of, any press is good press. You have the attention.
Yeah.
You're like, then, like, the more eyes that you have on it, the more
Well, and-
potential to
When money gets
Yeah.
involved, people will take advantage any way they can.
Yeah, so,
So, as an extension of that, do you feel that as younger Gen X, millennials, people that were raised on fantasy, as we start creating the content, we become content creators, do you think that's helping like push the cryptid acceptance and the cryptid narratives?
probably. And also, I want to point out here that not all of it, but the prominent place where cryptids come from is the US. We are the largest exporter of cryptids in the world. We love our cryptids. There's other cryptids in other countries, they do exist, but we are definitely the biggest. And I do think a part of that comes down to our optimism. We're like, oh, no, it's real, it's a thing. We're going to find it, it'll be there. We're just shamelessly optimistic about whatever it is we decide to be optimistic about. And I think cryptids are just an example of that. Like, we have no benefit of it. It's like, we found Sasquatch. Okay, neat. Like, I'm sure it probably has some significance in paleontology and everything else. Sure, probably. But for the rest of us, do we care? Be like, yeah, it was real. Okay. But like, to prove your point, like, again, we're looking for aliens. If tomorrow the government came down and said, yes, we have aliens, his name is Bob, he hangs out in Nevada, we've talked to him for 50 years, he hasn't taught us much yet. He likes Kit Kats. We'd be like, okay, cool. Does it teach us anything? No, not really, but.
Well, there was that thing that was just like a couple months ago where they
Yeah.
released all that footage of UFOs,
Yeah.
and then the next day we were just
We're like,
interested in the next popular thing, like
Yeah,
whatever new.
We're fine with it. But our minds are expanding and we're looking at other things and we're like, oh, cool, that's a real thing that exists, neat. And honestly, our attention spans are a lot less than they used to be too, so that doesn't help.
That's kind of what science is, finding out things for the sake of knowing it.
Yeah, just for the.
But just writing
for
it down.
For the giggles. Yeah, so it's, and obviously, as you guys can imagine, cryptozoology is not very well embraced in actual, I'm trying not to apply judgment words here, but in more established fields of science, it's not exactly embraced or encouraged, but neither is extraterrestrial searching. If you get physicists who go looking for extraterrestrials, get made fun of. They don't care. They're convinced they're right and they're going to go figure it out. They'll find it. It'll be believers that find stuff. Believers that gave us iPods. They saw Star Trek and went, oh, you can just call up music. I'm going to make that. And they did, simply because they wanted it. So,
Can I say something back to the point on here?
Yeah.
Getting the acceptance. So just to date myself, my first experience with our Northwestern buddies, the Bigfoot, was a movie called Creature from Black Lake. Does anybody know that? It's a old 70s movie.
Isn't it kind of like a found footage?
Not quite. I wish it was, because don't even get me
It would
started.
be on her panel.
Yeah, I'm doing a found footage panel. Quick plug. Anyway, that's tomorrow night. But no, it's not quite found footage. But there are a lot of, for some reason, Bigfoot movies and found footage go together, like peanut butter and chocolate, and that's a whole other thing.
I think I'm thinking of Legend of Boggy Creek.
Yes, and then you would be able, part two. You are 100% right. Part two was like a fake documentary. But so the idea here, the point that I wanted to make was, like, I was introduced to this in the 70s, and then there was the $6 Million Man fights Bigfoot, and as I'm growing up, and they're inserting Bigfoot in pop culture, and in some cases, like Boggy Creek, I'm not sure what their message was. It was just low budget, just let's make a movie. Creature from Black Lake was a legitimate horror film. $6 Million Man, I don't know what, it was not lending any legitimacy to the belief system. So, I mean, I grew up thinking Bigfoot was a little bit of a joke, just based off the pop culture that I would like, of how it was exposed to me. That doesn't take away from, I think, other people's experiences. So I think it can be a little bit subjective on whether or not what you're exposed to brings any legitimacy to things. But I will say this: I had one Bigfoot experience in my life, and may I share it?
Yeah, go ahead, please.
If not here, then where?
Right?
Good point. I was watching a documentary about Bigfoot. I'm in my 20s at this point, and I'm just I don't know. It's on TV. I'm just watching it. I'm staring this thing down. I'm not a believer or a non-believer. I'm just like, oh gosh, this thing's like cryptids. My friend lives up the street. It's dark out. and he lives up the street, and I decided to walk through my neighborhood to go to his house. And as I'm walking up this street, this dog out of nowhere, it was on top of me when it started barking. And I was like in the middle, like literally in the middle of the street. And the first thing I thought was that Bigfoot was gonna kill me. And so, you know, I think it's not so much about whether you believe or don't believe. I think that if you're exposed to it at the right time and the right stimuli hits you, it can lend a lot of believability. Like I believed in Bigfoot for that moment. There was just no doubt in my mind. I'm like, oh, it's just a crazy dog that's trying to kill me. But yeah, I don't know. I think it's interesting that we kind of rely on all of our mediums, and a lot of times it's pop culture that we get we get these things introduced to us.
Well, and I think back to his point earlier too, we all have that pet cryptid that we wish beyond everything that was real, because we just think it's so cool. For me personally, that's the Wendigo. I absolutely love the Wendigo. But it goes back to sitting around the campfire, because the Wendigo originated from Native American folklore and their stories of telling it. And now today in pop culture, it gets used as a, correlation for colonialism and everything like that. But, I would love the Wendigo to be real. Would that be terrifying as all get out? Yes. But,
So what is a Wendigo?
Well, so the original myth of the Wendigo is a person who is taken over by an evil spirit who basically becomes so insatiable that they turn to cannibalism. They'll eat and consume literally anything and never be satisfied, because no matter how much they consume, the legend goes that they will grow to the size of what they consume, so that they are never fully satisfied. And there's stories that go back. One of my favorite ones is it was a story about a Wendigo who took this really skinny little boy along with him to fatten him up to eat him later. Ends up, the boy runs to a village, and they go and cut off the Wendigo's legs, thinking that would stop him. And they came back days later, and he was eating his own legs. And they're like, "You really are eating your own legs?" And he's like, "Yes." And so they ended up killing him, because, goodness, that's terrifying. But, yeah, so Wendigos are very, very interesting all the way around.
Yes, sir.
So, are you familiar with Arizona's local Wendigo myth? We actually have the Leon monster is a Wendigo offshoot.
I've heard of that one, yep.
Well, and to that point, like talk about like the pet stuff, when you're talking about all this stuff, all I can think of is that somewhere, at least speaking for most men, I can say, I think pretty comfortably, somewhere deep inside, most of us want to be Sam and Dean, and we want to kill monsters and creatures and feel heroic about, doing that. So I think a part of that too is like that belief system of or cuddle. You do you. I mean, so there's a part of us that wants that to be true, and there's also a part of us that wants to believe that something extraterrestrial, something beyond our control, is more responsible for something than the boring truth. The boring truths are not. They're not very exciting.
Well, yeah, and to your point earlier of, memory is not good, and we change things as we remember. Because originally, going back to the Wendigo real quick, originally the Wendigo is just a humanoid person. But now every time you look up Wendigo stuff, it's like this weird deer creature with the skull and the antlers, and realistically it was only ever just a humanoid person that, either grew bigger or smaller depending on their appetite.
Basically a Titan from Attack on Titan. Like
Pretty much.
Yeah. No, I get that.
So, hear me out. Key difference between, I'm kind of changing track, a biologist and a cryptozoologist.
Uh-huh.
The biologist finds the weird, creepy animal they're looking for, and the cryptozoologist doesn't. So, right? Because, the guy who found gorillas, he was just like, hey, I think there's this, big hairy man running around the forest, and find them.
Yeah.
What
and the big difference comes down to the reach you're trying to do, because most biologists that try to find species, it's like, oh, we found this other little, slightly different version of a beetle. It looks the same as every beetle, but it's just different enough it's a different species, or a slug, or a fungus, or something. It's not grand. It's not, like people make fun again, the giant squid things. That's just like, well, that's a Jules Verne story. Why the hell are you looking for that? Until they did, they went, oh, well, yeah, I guess that does make sense. So you're right. The only difference between a biologist and a cryptozoologist is their level of success.
Yeah, and there's a lot of those, like, when we were doing our research for this panel, like, there's a lot of cryptids that, like, where you have your wendigos and your big feet and everything, and then there's also, like, oh, it's like a cougar, or it's a the Malagasy hippo, or like, oh, it's a hippo, but like,
It's a
he's
tiny
like a little guy. Yeah,
It's just a hippo with dwarfism.
Yeah.
Which
now
is
it's
a
a
thing. They're
cryptid.
really cute, by the way. If you've ever seen one, they're adorable. Yes, sir.
So do you think the resurgence of cryptids is kind of just a new form of like old school tall tales and whatnot?
Yeah.
Because I feel like a lot of cryptids are kind of just a logical expansion of like old school's Paul Bunyan, guide us all. Well, now we have Moth that guide us on.
Yeah. Well, and like with now, especially with us nowadays, again, we have in our hands here the entirety of human knowledge can be accessed from this device right here in my hand. Reality's boring. It's dull, and you don't have to work at it too much. But fantasy, it's endless, and there is no answer. There's no definitive anything, and I don't think it's too tough to say, like, right now, things kind of suck a little. So, reality can kind of go away. I was going to say something meaner, but let's not do that. So,
Well, there's a real power to human belief. Like
Yes.
there's something behind that, like the way that humans believe in something versus something that they know. I always give the example of a backflip. A backflip is not an evolutionary advantage. It doesn't make you determine whether fruit is ripe or not. It's just kind of cool to do. But you can't do a backflip unless you believe that you can do a backflip. Try it if you disagree.
But not here.
But you have to believe it, and there's something so strange about that that thing. It does make it so much larger than life, and it's that same thing where so many eyewitness accounts of cryptids or aliens, they're like a lot of them are able to have these interesting shared experiences where they truly believe something, but but who knows if they know it?
What about if it's backed up by actual physical, tangible items or proof?
well, then it becomes biology at that
Yeah.
point.
Well,
'Cause that is
take your-
provable.
Okay, take your example, okay, and you as well. Okay, there is organizations that actually say they have tangible items that cannot be explained.
Right.
Okay. And with the invention of the phone, everybody's got one. So now we have actual pictures, and granted they can be doctored, so that's a whole separate thing. But if you have pictures, footprints, metallic items that cannot be classified,
Right.
okay, then that becomes some type of proof that something, not saying what it is, but something is there and something is real. So how do you distinguish that?
So that's that next step of science, because the first step is finding proof. The second step is recreating the experiment and trying to.
And exposing it to enough people.
Yeah.
Because like there are those people out there, even like you could show them proof all day long that the sky is blue, but they're gonna still be like, nope, I think it's green.
Yeah, if you're a husband in a horror movie, no amount of proof will convince you the house is haunted. You won't believe it. It's just, nope, the house walls are bleeding. Nah, it's just
We put our
fungus.
life savings into
Yeah,
this.
it's not haunted, shut up.
Pennzoil.
So some people are just gonna have that, yeah.
How many people have to see something or experience something for that to be real?
Well, so that's a good question, but again, it comes down to not necessarily, okay, for anyone who's been in Phoenix long enough, the Phoenix lights that happened in, what, 1997? I was a kid, I watched it happen. We all watched it happen. Now, we got a definitive answer to what it was? No. We know it was something because we have enough eyewitness accounts that told the same story that have no connection to each other. We can prove that it happened. We have no idea what it was. I have an example for you guys, a real world example. In the early 1900s, I don't remember the exact year, it was like 1910, something like that. In West Virginia, there was a rash of these, at the time what we would call now an extraterrestrial event. People were having insomnia, they couldn't sleep, they were irritable, they were anxious, they were reporting this gas that was happening, and they were reporting things, beings outside of their windows. This was reporting from multiple people in this town. Had no connection to each other whatsoever, separate accounts. Baffled people for years, it just stopped all of a sudden. No one could figure out what the hell happened. They were able to go back and recreate the event, and basically in a nutshell, it was barn owls. Barn owls, if you guys don't know, are creepy as hell. Their feathers are somewhat bioluminescent. So back then, there wasn't no artificial light, especially in that area. It was all candles. At night, pure darkness. But moonlight would reflect off. They were able to recreate this and show the barn owls were going to windows. People were seeing their faces, and the way their eyes looked in the dark looked like these two bright eyes. The gas was basically, there was no gas. People were just, it was mass hysteria. They were just so freaked out by hooting barn owls keeping them up at night that they invented this whole thing out of nowhere. Again, dozens of people all reported this. But then you hear your neighbors talking about, like, oh yeah, I did too. There was a gas. There was no gas. There was no aliens. It was barn owls.
Yeah, and there is something to that, like when somebody tells you you're right about something, if you're driving your car and somebody cuts you off and you're like, oh, that guy's such a jerk, and your passenger says, yeah, he was a jerk, you were doing the right thing. You feel like $1 million. You're like, yeah, we're gonna team up.
We could run him off the road. He deserved it. We are better people.
Yeah. Like, there's something that just fills us up. Like that confirmation bias is a more potent drug than anything you can get on the streets.
In the back there, yeah.
So that actually reminded me of something I thought about, two things that could inspire Wendigos, like how they are modern-day is one of the things is how deers, some deers shed their antlers.
Yeah.
Yep.
Just creepy.
I love it.
Against rocks, and it gets really gory and bloody and gross. So I think that definitely inspires it. Also, I forget what it's called, I think it's wasting disease.
Yeah.
Some elk and stuff, and it literally makes the animal act like a zombie in a way. Weird, really weird things. So I think those two things definitely cut into like
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, no, that totally lends into it, because I of course love that Wendigo, the antlers, the whole bit. That's my favorite ever. But also a lot of people don't realize that deer are not herbivores, they're omnivores. So they're scavengers like anything else. So if there's, another dead deer or a dead bear or rabbit, whatever, they'll eat what they'll eat. So I could see back, when we don't know too much about the world, of being like, oh my God, that must be a Wendigo. It's eating meat. Like, that's so not natural. So it gets thrown around a lot.
Yeah, but like anything else, we don't have actual knowledge to replace it with allegorical knowledge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's true.
So for a phenomenon that's not tied to an animal, but like a group experience, like the hum is around the world,
Yeah.
Oh,
would you call those cryptids or would you call something else?
No, generally cryptids are specifically some kind of fauna, and so some type of creature or a physical living being, which I guess could also. I guess there's probably cryptid funguses out there. I guess I'm sure there are probably cryptid ferns that I'm not aware of that are like among that community. I'm sure they're like, that's a real thing. Damn it! Like I'm sure that exists, but generally speaking, cryptids would be specifically a creature or an animal of some kind. But it is pretty closely related to just a general phenomenon of some kind that we can't, like the hum, which I find creepy as shit. I really do. Yeah.
You mentioned earlier that the United States is largely where most cryptids come from.
Yeah.
We really like them, have a lot of them.
Us and Russia.
A lot of it could be partially because we came to the New World and encountered all these different civilizations and all these different groups of people who had their own beliefs. And we went to a new place and they said, yeah, there's Wendigos here. Like, you gotta be careful. We came to this new scary place and we're like, oh, you know, and it kind of blended into it, so we adopted them. That were already here.
That's a good point. But it also is that's an interesting point. I think a lot of it too ties in the fact that also officially, actually, guys, in case you're curious, economically, America's largest export now officially is pop culture. It's entertainment. That's where we make the bulk of our international stuff, and that's been true for quite a long time. That's why the majority of the world's film industry is here, and the world's majority of book publishing is here, because we just like our pop culture stuff. Yeah.
I think part of it also too is that, like, while it's sort of true that, like, what you're saying, our pop culture is like our biggest soft export, our biggest export in all that sense.
Yeah.
I also think it's true that we kind of look at it from an American view, and so we think, like, here's the largest exports of, like, cryptids or whatever. But would you not, if you lived in Ireland and you believe in this stuff, consider a leprechaun a cryptid? Would you not consider, like, a kelpie
Okay,
or anything like that?
so to that point, okay, so my family's Irish. My grandmother came from Ireland. Both my grandmothers, actually, both sides. Believing that fairies are real and cause damage in your home is just good sense. So just saying. So
I think we just have a different cultural cachet, and so we kind of like co-opt these things as cryptids, which is kind of like in the bones of the Wendigo itself. This is like as real to people from this culture as God is to anybody who's religious.
Yeah.
yeah,
Well, that kind of touches to just the American view. We grow up and we say the Pledge of Allegiance. We believe in, you know, these things. We like belief is so strong in our upbringing in America. We'd like to think that like we had moved past different things that might be a little silly to some and accept all cultures, but we still have in God we trust on our money in 2024.
that's because of the commies.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the power of belief in America is.
It's
So who
powerful.
believes more in chupacabra?
What's that?
Do Americans, are we like the purveyors of pushing the chupacabra narrative, which I don't know, is that an American cryptid?
No.
No, it's Mexican.
Yeah.
I would say that one of the things that I think about when I think about why do these things persist, especially in the United States, and I think it works for skunk apes and Wendigo and and
jackalope.
Bob. That's my name for Sasquatch.
The jackal.
There's so much empty space that it's like we don't really appreciate just how much unoccupied forest and how much unoccupied
Precisely.
swamp there is out there. It allows us to keep believing, it's like you could, I think the bottom line is that you could show people evidence that says mermaids, those were manatees. Look, put them side by side. Oh, that explains everything. There you are going to have people that are never going to not believe in mermaids. The ocean's too big.
Well, yeah, and we've only explored, 5% of the total
Well, I mean,
ocean?
I haven't explored anything. Like,
No, but us as a people, we've only explored 5% of the ocean.
that's James
That's
Cameron's
a whole
job.
lot of, that's a whole lot of ocean left.
Yeah.
Honestly, we will meet aliens before we fully explore the sea.
Yeah, the abyss will become like a historical documentary eventually.
There's probably an alien here watching us, laughing at us for all of this.
Right.
Yes, sir.
I just want to say that also, America has a wide variety of different types of area, like there's swamps, there's forests, there's desert.
Yep.
So that means you can have a lot of different types of cryptids for different types of areas in one country.
Oh, absolutely. You, sir.
Oh, yeah, I was gonna say, Europe's scary because it's old.
Yeah.
America's scary because it's big, but we're also young, so we have a lot of unexplored space exactly, where it's like, all we have is space to fill.
Yeah, I've been in some of those unexplored areas. They can stay unexplored. They can have them. They're creepy as hell.
Well, I grew up in the Midwest, and one of the first things that you learn is not to go out to the woods at night.
Right.
And it's not just, there's nobody ever told you why you don't go to the woods at night. You accept
just
you
don't.
go to the woods at night. And so I think there's also a certain amount of imagination fills the blanks.
Well, well, exactly. So, okay, so like going back to, like the anthropological source of it, like those original Grimm fairy tales that we all know of. If you tell a child, don't go in the forest at night, and they're gonna go, well, why? And you don't have 4 hours to explain that we don't do well in the forest anyway. We lose our sense of direction. It's dark. You're gonna get cold really fast. You're gonna lose body temperature. We don't have time for all of that.
Here's a creepy little
so
gremlin
it's
that's
yeah.
gonna get you.
If you go in the forest, this bender snatch thing is gonna get you and it's gonna eat you. And then I'm gonna yell at you after you've been eaten for doing it. It's easier to just say, just trust me, there's a thing out there that's gonna gobble you up. Same thing of like, we deal the story of like the wolf, keep lying about the wolf and all of a sudden the wolf is real, we don't believe you. It teaches kids not to lie. So yeah, it's easier just to invent a boogum to tell them like, don't do this because kids are idiots and you just need to teach them this.
That's also why a lot of them look like creatures in those areas.
Oh yeah.
They're playing off of that because, see, there it is right there.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, my dad, he convinced me there was an 8-foot rattlesnake that was like, like the size of like a Labrador retriever kind of thing, to keep me from wandering around the desert when I was a kid because I didn't know. I'm like, it's a snake, whatever. I can outrun a snake. No, you can't. So he just convinced me there was this great big thing out there that was going to eat I believed him. I still believe him. I still believe it's a real thing.
Little Prince, that's a snake that ate a elephant.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. You're right.
All right, so I've got a question that kind of ties into the sort of blending of cryptid culture with general pop culture. So obviously cryptids are kind of having a bit of a moment online, YouTube channels such as Wendigo, kind of putting videos out there, just kind of bringing cryptids to the public eye. And on one hand, it's bringing in obviously a lot of new people to kind of discussion boards and different communities regarding cryptids. But on the other, I think that a lot of the people who are kind of joining the community now aren't those who would give any real credence or weight to real cryptid theories and just kind of see it as a sensationalized.
It's a creepypasta. Yeah.
So that kind of
Yeah.
So my question is, do you guys think that this sort of internet moment that cryptids are having is more positively or negatively impacting kind of public perception and respect for, the cryptid community?
So here's one of the, I think, in my opinion anyway, the best thing about the cryptid community is I don't think anything we do or say will make them, they don't give a shit.
Yeah.
They
Yeah,
don't.
one way or another.
You can't put a Bigfoot believer down like they.
No.
They're pretty stuck in their.
We have our time now, like you said, there's a rise, and we go through this. We go through all of it. And in case you guys don't know, so again, horror, the big thing about horror, it's always a reflection of that society's anxieties at that time. During election season, worried about immigration, zombie movies go up. When people are afraid of immigrants, zombie movies are popular. Horror is always a reflection of our anxieties. So right now, cryptids, it's the unknown, but possible. So right now, we're scared, but we're looking for answers. We're looking for some kind of truth. And that's a reflection of it. So if you ever want to know, that's the deal. So right now, they're having their time. When the economy gets better, because it will, and when things calm down and things settle down and everything, we'll switch to something else. We'll be scared of something else, and our horror stuff that's going out right then will change accordingly.
I also think it goes along the lines of that, no press is bad press. Like it at least lends it more and more attention. So people who possibly want to get funding for their expeditions to try and prove whatever they want to. I mean, it makes things possible because you get people all excited. They, donate more, they give more, and the attention shines on them long enough for maybe someone to accomplish something.
I think that's what we need more of in this world. Is you don't have to believe in anything, but if somebody else does, don't harsh their mellow. Let them I want people to look for, to try to find cryptids and try to prove their existence. If that's what brings their joy, let them do it. If you want to find the edge of the flat Earth, my God, I'd make a show out of it. I would watch it. I just want to see people living their best lives and pursuing the truth. Cryptids are very cryptic. Sorry, that was really stupid sounding.
Well, to expand on that, it's funny because reality is subjective. No matter how we want to think about it, we are only going to see the real world through our eyes, and that's interpreted through the way our parents raised us, our friends when we were little, maybe genetic memories passed on, whatever it could be. There's a bias there. And so if you believe in the great spaghetti monster or Jesus or capitalism or the power of positive thinking,
American
and
dream.
it makes your life better, and it doesn't really affect anybody else, why not, man? Who cares? Yeah, I believe in the chupacabra.
Oh, yeah.
Whatever.
Go find
Keeps
it.
my kids out of the woods.
I'll believe in it enough. Yeah.
I think it also has a lot to do with, the sequence of cryptids, the idea that we as a culture are kind of expanding, so the idea of who gets to tell what story, who gets to tell stories, who gets their culture stories told, expands, so we have a lot more cryptids, we have
That's-
a lot more of all this stuff, because people are getting to tell their stories and their ideas that haven't before. And so they bring this in, and we learn things, and then people go, oh, hey, this is a cool story, or hey, this fits up with an experience that I had. Maybe your, whatever this is the same thing as mine.
Well, that's a good point. We actually do have the ability nowadays where there's no gatekeeping anymore for anything. If you want to make movies, you can just go make movies. You don't need a studio, you don't need anything. You just, a cell phone and an idea, you can go make a movie, you can write a book. There's no one stopping you. You don't have to get a publisher, you don't have to do any of that kind of stuff. Find a publisher, please. But you don't necessarily have to. You can do it all on your own. There's nothing stopping you. So that's actually a really good point.
Kind of just I guess with everyone else is saying on how, with YouTube, that's sort of I don't want to say like a Gen Z, Gen Y, or whatever kind of thing, but it's things that are getting passed down forward. Like for them, it's YouTube. Like they'll learn more about cryptids from YouTube, like, from Windy Doom, for people who are doing that, or, for me, from Gen X, it was just like, oh, unsolved mysteries, that's how I learned about, well, Karen the Henderson is how I learned about, but also unsolved mysteries, and reruns of In Search Of was how I learned all cryptid stuff, but even then, it was like, for, like, my parents, it was classic Disney movies, because, Disney took the grim stories, fairy tales that we can't really tell that to children, into a Little Mermaid,
Yeah.
Snow White, or whatever, like Beauty, where it gets passed down every generation. It just happens to be in a new format, which goes with the whole culture. Which yes, zombie movies. Technically, zombie movies have been around since like the 70s. With the Dawn, the original Night of the Living Dead, or 50s, 60s, because Night of the Living Dead. But if you didn't know about it, you would have seen, World War Z or something, or like you played a zombie, Resident Evil or The Walking Dead is how you learn about it, but it's just a storytelling mechanism that, by medium just changes. Like today it's YouTube, tomorrow it's, I don't know, TikTok or Instagram,
Yeah, and we could see the echoes of that through pop culture, like as early as like 1999. In 1999, our economy was great. Like the biggest tragedy, if you look at all of the movies that came out in 1999, it was just kind of a malaise and a lack of identity. Like all these movies were about people who were stuck in an office. Like from Neo to Kevin Spacey in American Beauty to like we were all bored. Then 9/11 happens, and then all of the movies are about disasters, about people coming together. Spider-Man is swinging through the city and he lands on an American flag and everybody goes buck wild. It's awesome. You're like, we believe in America again. Like they all have echoes in storytelling. And going off what you were saying earlier about like how the internet has really expanded these stories. The interesting thing is like when you're like, now that YouTube is so prevalent, when YouTube first came out, we'd like to believe that all of those videos, it's just somebody who filmed something for real, and we don't really have a way to tell whether or not that's factual or not.
And do we
just
care?
see their
Yeah, do we care?
experience. And it's kind of evidence. It's a video. I watched it. I saw it. Yeah.
Yeah.
But don't you think maybe there should also be a certain amount of responsibility that's exercised? Because, getting to like more American, a lot of crypto people like to back up their belief in Bigfoot American, all the Native American tribes, they all know the same thing, but there's this really amazing content creator named Trey the Explainer. Seriously, if anyone has 2 hours to kill, watch his video about Bigfoot. He did meticulous research on Native American tribes, Bigfoot legends, and he actually found that a lot of Native American tribes did not have a commonality where Bigfoot was concerned. And he basically came to the conclusion that Bigfoot is more of I'm gonna say it, a colonization idea, or do I even say like kind of a, cultural appropriation? It's more of an idea, it's really not held in Native American, so like, I don't know, I just feel like maybe when people like go at it, just know that you're dealing with something that someone says comes from another culture, but then who says it comes from this culture? Maybe talk to someone that actually does come from that culture and find out, well, is this really one of yours? Because the Wendigo does have that foundation. I believe it's more of a legend of the Algonquin tribe, but it gets told and then it gets appropriated by another culture. And like you were saying earlier, you look at it from the more beliefs that are told by its local people versus the pop culture idea of it. They're vastly different.
They really are.
So
Yeah.
it's like,
But
or should just let people.
and that's where you get into the whole, what I hate the term, but the whole idea of like the zeitgeist. You have that things get into the collective consciousness and it just becomes part of it. It's there now. We couldn't purge that stuff now, even if we wanted to. And that's also like to prove your point about like where's the line and everything. Acting in good faith is usually going to be your best bet.
Okay.
If you truly believe something, acting in good faith, pursue it. Like to go nuts, it's positive. If you're acting in bad faith just because you want it to be, you have an axe to grind, you have an agenda.
Write fiction.
Yeah, write fiction. Yeah, exactly. And just call it fiction, and that's fine. You can still do that. And you can still influence culture. Again, like the alien thing, I'll go back to that. And there's a theory, don't know if it's true or not, obviously, because it's just a theory, that like the government encourages the production of materials on extraterrestrials to get us used to it. Because now the idea of like extraterrestrials visiting, we're like, well, thank God, either blow us up or take us off of here. What? Just do something, please. Obviously, we're screwing up. We have a different mindset than we did back even in the 90s. Aliens showed up, they blew our shit up, we hated them. Now we're like, it's Paul. Okay? So there's a theory of that. So no matter what you do, it's going to happen. It's organic. You can't really stop it from happening. You're going to have bad actors that do stuff, in general, like people who, again, there's no limit anymore. People can produce whatever they want to. I've seen people put out books and I'm like, you really should have been stopped. But you can't stop them, nor should you. You're going to have good, you're going to have bad, you take them both, and there you have facts of life.
Do you consider demons or ghosts cryptids?
No.
Personally.
No. I'm sure an argument could be made, but
Is it on our list here? No, I'm just kidding.
no, I wouldn't personally think so. I would truck that up more to a supernatural belief, like angels or God or anything else. Yeah.
I just thought about something. It's possible that a lot of these cryptids once existed, but because if there was only one of them, or they were like a species that was dying out, it's like Bigfoot. If you believe there's only one Bigfoot, he has to have died at some point, because he can't have lived forever if we believe in modern science. So it's possible that maybe like 100 or so years ago, maybe even like in ancient times, there was a Bigfoot, but now there isn't anymore.
Yeah. Well, and that's like the Loch Ness Monster theory. Like the Loch Ness Monster is a plesiosaur that just somehow survived the extinction kind of thing. Somehow.
The biggest problem with that line of thinking, though, is that we still lack the evidence, like the physical evidence of a Sasquatch skeleton, to know that it really existed. But I like that theory personally.
All right, last question.
I do.
I want to believe.
Oh.
Either or. Rock, paper, or scissors.
I just want to bring it back to a point that was made earlier, where you were talking about how the cryptids are kind of like in the horror films or kind of a reflection of things that society is afraid of.
Yeah.
So I kind of want to know, like, what you would think the law might actually be a reflection of, and then I also kind of want to know, like, which one is your favorite cryptid, and then what does the fears sound like to you?
So the blob, okay, so I'm glad you mentioned the Blob. Okay, so the Blob might be an exception to this. The Blob was actually made specifically because they were trying to figure out what would be the most commercially viable horror movie they could make in 1954. They were like, we're gonna make a monster movie. They're hot right now in theaters. What can we make cheaply? And they went, well, we can just make this like goose stuff and make that a bad guy, and it's cheap to make, and we'll make all this money. So the Blob might be a bad, it's a good example, but it's one where that was not necessary. You always have those outliers.
Those
For
are
my
pure commercialism.
yeah, for commercialism. But and again, it's not just cryptids either. It's my thing about the horror thing is just horror in general. Whatever is horror right now or whatever is the big horror stuff at the time is, is what we're largely afraid of. Again, so like when vampires become more prevalent and everything, it's a loss of identity. People are afraid of losing who they are and everything else. So and again, it's not perfect, but it's a pretty close thing on that one. Frankly, I like the zombie ones the most, not for the zombies themselves, because again, when zombies are more popular, we're a wreck. Like, things aren't good. Like, we really aren't mentally well when that's happening. So it's a nice way to be like, oh, okay, so these are back up again. So things are, and like right now, ghosts are back up. Ghosts are everywhere. We're really big on hauntings and spirits and the unseen and that kind of stuff because we don't know where things are going. We're very uncertain. So it's kind of exciting because watching people work through their bullshit, whatever that happens to be, it's kind of nice. It's interesting. And creature features are one of those examples, though. I will say, like when it comes to creature stuff, Sharknadoes and your anacondas and that kind of stuff, creature features are largely exempt from the mass anxiety rule because creature features are just fun, and it's a release. We're just like, oh, it's this thing, and we're gonna fight it, and we're gonna win, and hooray! Even if we don't win, we couldn't have won. It was too big. It was too powerful. Okay, like it's immune from that rule. That's why creature features have always been popular. A, they're cheap, and B, they're fun. So unfortunately, we are getting close to being out of time, guys. I'm so sorry. I know we keep going forever.
Oh, shoot, yeah.
We are very close though on time, and I don't want to be rude to our next panelists that are in this room. They're probably friends of mine. So do keep in mind, we do have more panels coming up. All of us here, we've got several panels throughout the rest of the weekend. There's all kinds of programming going on. Do appreciate you all being here. If you want to read more about a vampire, for instance, I've got a book that just released this week about vampires. You can talk about that versus cowboys. It's great fun. But we hope to see you guys again. Guys, what do you guys got coming up talking about?
Yeah, I don't really have anything. Just thank you guys for coming. It's day one of Fan Fusion. You guys decided to be here, hear us talk about nonsense. So,
Yeah.
thank you for
All right.
coming.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate you.